Okay, can you hear me? All right. Okay, I want to welcome you to Archery Talk with Pro Tracker. Today is Thursday, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Great weather. I hope everybody's having a good day. We're going to talk a little bit today about tuning your bow and making sure your arrows are hitting where you want them to. We've all run into the problem of when we go hunting, we all get buck fever, whether we're hunting antelope or elk or hogs or whatever. That will happen to where, you either jerk or, you've shot, you knew it was a good shot, but it wasn't. So what did I do wrong? Let's go back to the basics. Let's go back to where we're starting by shooting into a target. What you want to do is you want to shoot an arrow with a field tip. So what we'll do is we'll shoot into a target and see where it's upon the impact. So as you go to shoot into a target, aim for a specific spot. You can either take a small target with a bullseye and put it on your target, or you can do anything you want. An X, it doesn't matter, as long as you've got a place so you can identify upon impact of where that arrow goes. Shoot for that X. If it is up and a little high, you need to adjust. Now remember, whenever you adjust your pins, you chase it the way it is. So if it's high, you have to raise your rest and your pins up. Not your rest, your pins. If it's to the left or right, if it's to the left, you need to chase it to the left. Remember, you have to chase it in order for it to compensate for the direction you need to correct. Now, don't think that you can just hurry up and click along there and change it real fast. Go slow. Go slow. Shoot it again. And then once you start to get your groups to where they're pretty consistent, then you can start to fine tune and adjust that. Shoot again. Shoot a half a dozen arrows. See where they're at. If they're a little bit sporadic, it might not be that your pins are off. It might be that you're a little bit off yourself. So you need to calm down, blow out a little bit when you've got it pulled back. And then we don't want to have trigger jerk. And what that is on that release, if you kind of pull it back or do anything, you can cause that arrow to either raise up or down, left or right. So all you have to do is just put it, slowly just release it. Now, once you've got it pretty well figured out where it's hitting on that target, there's a lot of other factors that come in. If you're having a hard time getting it to be consistent, maybe it's the knocking point where you lock it on as you pull back. If it's going to be up here, this is where it'll always sight in. Or if you're down here, use the same position. A lot of times it's easier to put your nose on that string when you pull it back, and you knock it right to the corner of your mouth. Or if it's got a little bit feel better, you need to come back, but hit it in the same spot every time. If you go up and down and around, you're not going to be consistent. So you need to slow down, go through slow until you've got it dialed down to where you're fairly consistent. Now, back to the buck fever. You can have it dialed right in, but when you see that animal, you're going to be maybe a little all over. Now, when you're shooting and practicing, you got to know your ranges. So start at 20 yards. Practice until you feel very confident on where that's at. Go back to 30 yards, do the same thing. Go back to 40 yards, do the same thing. Now, 40 yards, I'm a little bit erratic. Then move up to 35 yards. Practice, practice, practice. Now, what you got to remember is if you get better at the longer distances, so if I'm getting really, really consistent at 40, 45 yards, the 30, 25, and 20 yards are going to be so much easier to hit right on the money. Practice with your field tips is very important, but here's one thing that a lot of hunters don't do is you need to practice with your broadhead. Now, all the companies say that their broadheads shoot like field tips. I would say err on the side of caution, practice with your broadheads. Now, you got to remember, you got to have the right target to practice with your broadheads. Some targets will not be very forgiving with your broadheads, or you'll ruin your targets. So make sure you can shoot both broadheads and a field tip. When you're shooting and with the broadheads, and we're going to tune them. We're going to tune them so that they shoot correctly. When you shoot and you hit into a target, I'm actually going to a target now. I'm going to show you what it looks like. Let's go here. No, I still want that. Bear with me, I clicked on the wrong one. I clicked on the wrong one, guys. Just wait 1 second.
Pick up Mr. Preston and go get our hairs cut.
There we go. Hey, bear with me. This is,
He was there.
clicked on the wrong button. You know, yeah, go to Corbin. Let's just push that and see if it comes up. All right. Sorry, guys. There, okay. Corbin's coming up. All right. This is a gentleman that I guided this last fall on an elk hunt. Now he practiced and he practiced. When you watch this, you can see that you have to be confident, because look at that nice bull. Look at those cows out there. All right. There's an aerial view. There. Now look at this. Remember how last week we talked about weight? You have to have weight to help increase momentum. Can't hear me?
Yeah, we're not seeing it, Gary.
All right, okay, and we're not hearing me also. Alicia's helping me.
Yeah, you've got to turn your picture around so we can see what your screen is.
Okay. I've got my technician here helping me.
Good.
In progress. Right here. 1 second. There we go. There we go.
Can't see it.
All right. 1 second. Share screen. Oh, can you see that now? No, I better see what we're seeing there.
There we go.
Can you see it? Okay.
Yep.
Can you hear me too?
Yes.
Okay. All right. How do you get it? Right there. All right. Okay, so this is Corbin. And if you notice, that purple sleeve is called a bad boy. That's to help increase momentum and penetration, but also accuracy. That's one of the key things when you're sighting and tuning your bow, is making sure that you're hitting the spot in the place that you practice with. You're going to watch. Corbin is going to take a nice elk. There, he's found it. Now he's using a fixed blade. Doesn't matter if it's a fixed or expandable. They still work for any arrow and for any animal. Complete pass through. Look at the blood on them. All the way to, well, had to be all over it because it went all the way through. Look at that blood trail. That's what practice will do. That's what momentum will do if you have the right equipment and you hit where you aimed at. That's why it's very important that you practice and practice at various yards, because they're not going to be out there always at 20 yards, always at 30 yards. You might be at 28 yards. They might be at 34 yards. So you want to make sure you're going to get a good, hard, ethical shot. We'll go back to my screen. All right. Now, if you notice on that arrow was a bad boy sleeve. I actually happen to have a 150. Corbin was shooting a 200, but they all perform the same way. It raises your arrow up off your wrist, so you got the deeper penetration, you got the accuracy. Now I'm going to go back a little bit. I'm going to go back and forth because it's important. If you just kind of go the way in line, sometimes it doesn't work. With an expandable, expandables work very well on any type of animals, but the same thing, you have to practice with them. Now, expandables are a little bit different. You don't want to practice with an expandable that opens up for a lethal kill. All of your expandable broadheads have a practice one. Same thing as what we're talking about with a field tip. So when you practice with an expandable, make sure that you use the practice expandable broadhead, because you still want the same thing, to be able to sight that bow in. Now, when you sight it in with your broadheads, say it's shooting to the left, all you have to do is take your broadhead and back it off to the left. So if it's shooting to the right, back it off to the left, just a little bit at a time. Now you're wondering, if I loosen that up, what's going to happen to it? Well, Protractor Archery, we've kind of figured that out. What we want to do is we want to put a rubber O-ring. And a rubber O-ring, a little tiny rubber ring, it goes on the shaft of your broadhead. Here I'm just putting on a field tip. And then screw that in. That will lock it in place to where it's nice and tight. That way, when you do turn your broadhead left or right, then it still holds it in place, nice and snug. That's how you can adjust it left or right. Now, if it's up and down, that is a adjustment on your pin. All you have to do is adjust it up or down. Remember, broadheads are going to shoot different than your field tips. That's just the way they're built. Even though they say they will shoot, they can always be off just a little bit. Protractor Archery, we've been in business for going on 11 years. We've shot hogs with our protractor equipment, antelope, elk, mule deer, whitetail. We've shot, oh heavens, turkeys, shooting turkeys. Now turkey season's coming up. Turkey season in Utah is going to be on the 10th. That was the date I was trying to remember of this next month. On the 10th, we're going to be shooting turkeys. Now, a nice broadhead, practice. Now, I'm going to have to shoot for the body. I can't shoot for the head. The head's a little bit too small for old Gary to be able to see that head to hit him and take his head off. I don't want to miss him, so I'll shoot with the broadhead. Now, Protractor has a system, and it's called the Protractor Recovery System. I'm going to use a transmitter. So when I do hit that turkey, he flies off or he runs. If I don't drop him right there, but they'll crawl under the brush. And I want to be able to find him if he does take off. But that's where practice comes in. Practice on what you're shooting. Now, a turkey is not this great big fluffy feathers. A turkey is only going to be about like that. That's about as big as what that turkey is going to be. And you got to be able to hit that, not out here where you're going to hit feathers. So practice, practice, practice. Also, we need to remind everybody to, where the seasons are starting to come in and out, where we're going to be shooting different game. We're going to be using different weights. Well, on turkeys, you don't have to have as heavy a weight. So you don't want to change your broadheads, because when you start changing your broadheads, then because of, if this is 100, I want to put a 125, then I just have to start adjusting my pins. It all changes. But if you take a bat boy, that automatically compensates for that. This is how easily it fits. All you do is slide it on the shaft, lock in your broadhead. I'm just going to use my fill tip. Now it's ready to go. As I pull it back upon my wrist, this will actually elevate it and compensate for that weight. I don't have to change my broadheads. Now, one key thing with archery is, instead of putting a great big heavy broadhead on there, I can put a bad boy and it'll slide over the shaft of my arrow. And what happens there is it's easier, a lot easier to adjust your arrow with a bad boy than it is to keep changing your broadheads. Lock it in, put your broadhead on, now you're ready to go. A couple of things I want to talk to you about is also Protracker Archery. We think we have some of the keys and some of the answers on type of arrows. You've got micros, you've got your standard shafts, you got your mini micros. Depending on what brand, they're called different things, but you got a standard shaft and a micro. We have a third one, and it's called the Protracker Cobra. It's the lights out series. And how that works is, I'm going to take a 125, I'll slide over the shaft. There it is, it's all the way clear to the end. You can take any broadhead of your choice, but I'll take a fill tip, lock it in place. Now it's ready to go. What's unique about this arrow is that it's a regular shaft size on the 1/3 from the fill tip or the broadhead end, but as it goes down, what happens is it shrinks down to where it's a micro. So now it's a micro. So at the front, as it goes down, it tapers down to a micro. Why would we want to do that? Well, upon impact of an animal, especially a big game animal, you can have less drag. Less drag means less friction. Less friction is deeper penetration and more momentum, because it's not dragging as much. You've already hit a nice size hole, especially with the bad boy. The bad boy right behind that broadhead made a nice pilot hole, carries that arrow through. You can have more pass-throughs and deeper penetration by using the correct equipment. A nice, good broadhead that is tuned for your bow. The bad boys to add extra weight for momentum and penetration. Then also with a good arrow. The Cobra, that's a great arrow. We also carry a 3K weave. We've got testimonials of people that have shot 4 and 5 animals using the same arrow. I don't think they're using the same broadhead, but they're shooting the same arrow. So, in kind of winding up a little bit, we've had people sending us in reviews of what our products are, how they've liked them. I'm just going to read you a couple of them. We've got one, and this is from Randy Wilfong. He says, I had to know if it works, so went to my truck, forgot about the blood trail. I even came back in the wood in a different area. This thing took me right to my deer. I am a believer this thing really works. I will be using this thing for years to come. That was with the Protracker system. Here's another one. I'm a great shot, but if it's raining or going to snow after the shot, I always use my tracker. So far, Tony has been 4 for 4 on recovering his animals. Here's another one. Complete pass-through. The Protracker worked perfectly. Got to use this system on my bow kill this year. I'm terrible colorblind. and I have lost recoverable animals in the past. I was considering giving up on bow hunting as I do not believe it is ethical to be hunting and know it will be extremely challenging to track and recover an animal. This thing worked perfect. All of my doubts are gone. I had many questions about the operation of it and its limitations. The people there, Gary, was extremely knowledgeable and patient. I had many questions. In the end, it worked perfect. Accurately hit, nice pass through, transmitter stuck and started emitting on contact. Battery operated fine. Receiver worked perfect. Walked directly to the animal, and the animal fled out of sight, which gave me a very bad feeling. In the past, it's been a 50-50 chance of recovering that animal. I waited half an hour, flipped on the receiver, and bingo, got a reading, walked right down to it. Perfect. Really worked nice. Thank you, Mike. Get to know your equipment. Get to know what your limits are. Practice, practice, practice. I want to thank everybody that's been online with us today. And I just want you to know that we appreciate you following us on our social media. I appreciate those who have tuned in today and watched this. I just want you just to remember that Protracker Archery is here to help and let you know that until next time, we're signing off. This is Gary with Protracker. Have a great week until we meet again next week. Thanks.